Hey everyone, and welcome back to the AnzenGuard podcast. I'm Michael Reynolds.
And I'm Laura Wilson.
And Laura. You know how much I love diving into these tech and privacy issues, and lately I've been really digging into this whole thing with no-log VPNs. I mean, the idea that you can browse online and just not leave a single trace. It almost sounds too good to be true, right?
It does sound appealing, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially in a world where it feels like everything we do online is being tracked. But you're right, Michael, the reality of no-log VPNs is a bit more complicated.
Okay, so before we get into the no-log part, let's break it down for our listeners.
Yeah.
When we talk about logs in this context, what exactly are we talking about? I think a lot of people probably picture some dusty old notebook, not a digital trail of breadcrumbs.
You're right, it's definitely not a physical notebook. But the analogy of breadcrumbs is actually pretty accurate. Every time you connect to a website, a record is created, a digital log with information about your connection. This includes your IP address, which is kind of like your digital home address, the time you connected, how long you were there, and even potentially the specific pages or content that you accessed.
So it's not just about what you're looking at online, but more about all that behind-the-scenes communication happening between your device and the website.
Exactly.
Okay, so this is something that I think a lot of people don't realize. Every single connection creates this log, whether you're using your regular internet provider or a VPN. So when you use a VPN, you're basically just swapping one log for another, right?
That's right.
So how can any VPN claim to be no log if every single connection creates a log? It feels like everything has to be recorded somewhere.
You've hit on a key point, Michael, and that's where things start to get a little tricky. To really understand no-log claims, we have to make a distinction between different types of logs. There are connection logs, and then there are activity logs.
Hold on, let's break that down for a second. What's the difference between those two?
Okay, so think of it like this. Connection logs are like a record of connections between servers. Ideally, they would be super basic, just noting that a connection happened without any identifying user information.
So kind of like how a phone company might know that a call was made, but they don't know who was actually talking.
Exactly. Now, activity logs, those are the ones that get into the details. They can show what you actually did during that connection. Your browsing history, timestamps, downloads, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, so that's the stuff that makes it feel like someone's always watching over your shoulder.
You got it. And that's where no-log VPNs come in. Some VPN providers say they don't keep those activity logs, while others promise to get rid of both connection and activity logs.
But wait a minute. If these logs are created with every single connection, how can they just magically disappear? It's like promising a self-destructing message. You know it existed, but how can you ever be 100% sure it's really gone?
That's a great point, Michael, and it's one of the biggest challenges with no-log claims. It's almost impossible to prove that something doesn't exist, and that's where trust becomes a really big factor.
Right. It basically comes down to just taking their word for it. And honestly, that makes me a little uneasy. So how can we as users really know if a VPN provider is being truthful about their no-log claims?
You're absolutely right to be cautious. And even external audits, which are basically independent checks on a VPN's practices, they have their limits. They give you a snapshot in time, but they can't constantly monitor what a provider is doing. So it's not as simple as just seeing no log on a website and assuming everything's okay.
Okay, so let's say we do find a VPN provider that seems legit. They've got a clear privacy policy, good audit results, and we feel like we can actually trust them. Does that mean we're good to go? Can we just fire up that VPN and browse without a worry in the world?
Not quite, Michael. Even with a no-log VPN that you trust, there are other things to think about. It's all about building layers of protection for your online privacy.
So it's not just a one-and-done kind of thing?
Nope, definitely not. A VPN can mask your IP address and encrypt your traffic, which makes it much harder for someone to track you online. But it's not foolproof. There are other ways you can be tracked and other steps you should take to really boost your privacy.
Okay, so walk us through it. What else should we be thinking about?
Well, first, let's talk about jurisdiction. This is where things get really interesting. A VPN provider might have the best intentions in the world. But if they're based in a country with mandatory data retention laws, they might actually be forced to hand over your data, even if they say they're no log.
Wait, seriously? So even if a VPN provider wants to protect my data, their own government could make them give it up?
It's a scary thought, right? That's why understanding where a VPN provider is based is so important. You want to find one that's located in a country with strong privacy laws, a place that's outside the reach of those governments that are always hungry for data.
So it's not just about the VPN itself, but also about the legal environment that they're operating in. Okay, that makes sense. What else should we be checking when we're evaluating VPNs?
Let's talk about features. Some VPNs offer more than just the basics. They have extra tools that can really boost your privacy. One of the most important things to look for is something called a kill switch.
Ooh, kill switch. That sounds intense. What does that do?
It can actually be a lifesaver. Imagine you're connected to your VPN, browsing away, feeling all secure, and then suddenly your internet connection drops. Without a kill switch, your device might automatically switch back to your regular unprotected connection. Your real IP address could be exposed, and your data could be vulnerable.
Yeah, that would be a nightmare,
Yeah.
especially if you're on public Wi-Fi. So the kill switch basically prevents those accidental leaks.
Exactly. It instantly shuts off your internet traffic if the VPN connection fails, so your data stays protected no matter what.
That's awesome. I honestly had no idea that it even existed. What other cool features should we look out for?
Another one that's great for privacy is called double VPN.
Double VPN, so double the protection.
You got it. With double VPN, your traffic is routed through not one, but two VPN servers. It's like putting your data in a secret box and then putting that box inside another secret box. It adds an extra layer of encryption and makes it even harder to trace your online activity.
I'm seeing a theme here. It sounds like the key to online privacy is not just relying on one single thing, but building multiple layers of protection.
Exactly. And speaking of layers, let's not forget about other potential vulnerabilities, like cookies and browser fingerprinting.
Oh yeah, cookies. I know I'm supposed to clear them all the time,
Yeah.
but they always seem to come back.
I know, right? It's like they have a mind of their own. But those little bits of data that websites store on your browser, they can be used to track your browsing habits, your preferences, even things like what you've added to your shopping cart. Have you ever noticed how it seems like Amazon is reading your mind? Cookies are a big part of that.
That is a little creepy. So
Yeah.
clearing them regularly isn't enough.
It helps,
Mm-mm.
but you can actually adjust your browser settings to limit or block third-party cookies. Those are the ones that are most often used for tracking. And you can also consider using a privacy-focused browser, like Firefox or Brave. They have built-in features that block trackers and help protect your data.
So it's about choosing tools that prioritize privacy.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Now, what about this browser fingerprinting thing? That sounds kind of intimidating.
Yeah, it can be a little unnerving. Browser fingerprinting is basically a way for websites to collect information about your device and your browser settings. They create a unique fingerprint, and it can be used to track you even if you clear your cookies or use a VPN.
Wait a second. So even with all these precautions, websites can still figure out who I am? It feels like we're fighting a losing battle.
I know it can feel that way sometimes, but the good news is that there are steps you can take to make your browser fingerprint less unique.
Okay, like what?
Some browsers actually have built-in features to help with fingerprinting, and there are also browser extensions you can use to make yourself less trackable.
Okay, so we've talked about jurisdiction, VPN features, cookies, and browser fingerprinting. Is there anything else we need to be thinking about when it comes to online privacy?
Oh, we can't forget about the big one, social media. Those platforms are notorious for data collection. They collect everything from your likes and shares to your location and even your facial recognition data.
Don't even get me started on facial recognition.
It's like they're building a digital file on every single one of us.
So what can we do about it? Should we all just delete our social media accounts and live off the grid?
Well, that's always an option, but it's not realistic for everyone. If you're going to use social media, you need to be really careful about your privacy settings.
What kind of things should we be looking out for?
First of all, make sure you adjust your privacy settings. You want to limit the information that you're sharing publicly. Be mindful of the apps and games that you connect to your social media accounts. And be careful about clicking on those quizzes and surveys. They often collect a lot of data without you even realizing it.
So we've talked about VPNs, cookies, browser, fingerprinting, social media. It seems like there's a lot to think about when it comes to online privacy.
It's true, there's a lot going on. But with a little bit of knowledge and some effort, you can really make a difference in protecting your data.
So a lot of our listeners are probably wondering, is all this effort really necessary? Are we just being paranoid, or are there real risks if we don't take online privacy seriously?
That's a great question, and the answer is it depends. It depends on your individual situation, how much risk you're comfortable with, and how much you value your privacy.
Okay, so what are some of the potential consequences if we don't take online privacy seriously?
Well, on a basic level, your data can be used to target you with ads, which might not seem like a big deal at first, but it can get pretty annoying pretty quickly. Have you ever had that experience where you talk about something with a friend, and then all of a sudden you start seeing ads for it everywhere you go online?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like the internet is listening to my conversations.
Exactly. And that's just the beginning. In more serious cases, your data could be stolen in a data breach, which could lead to identity theft or financial fraud.
That's not good.
And in some extreme situations, your data could even be used for surveillance or censorship, especially if you're living in a country with limited internet freedom.
Okay, so it's not just about avoiding annoying ads. It's about protecting ourselves from some pretty serious harm.
That's right. It's about understanding that our data has value and that it's worth protecting.
Okay, you've convinced me. Online privacy is important, but it can feel a little overwhelming. Where do we even start? What are some practical steps we can take?
First, be mindful of what you share online. Think before you post, and be aware of the information you're giving away, even in those seemingly casual interactions.
So be conscious of our digital footprint.
Exactly. Also, use strong, unique passwords for all of your online accounts. I know it's tempting to use the same password everywhere, but if one of your accounts gets compromised, they all could be.
Yeah, I learned that lesson the hard way a while back.
And remember, a no-log VPN is just one part of a bigger strategy for online privacy. It's important to be aware of other ways you can be tracked, like through cookies, browser fingerprinting, and like you said, logging into accounts that can identify you.
So be proactive and choose tools that are designed with privacy in mind, like using a privacy-focused browser or search engine.
Exactly. And don't forget to check your privacy settings regularly. On social media and other online platforms, you might be surprised at how much information you're sharing without realizing it.
It's like a digital spring cleaning.
Exactly. And one last thing, stay informed about the latest privacy threats and best practices. Things are always changing online, so it's important to stay up to date.
This has been so insightful, Laura. I feel like I have a much better grasp on the whole online privacy thing now and what I can actually do to protect myself.
I'm glad to hear that, Michael. Remember, knowledge is power. The more you know about online privacy, the better decisions you can make about protecting your data.
Well said. We've covered a lot of ground today in this deep dive into no-log VPNs and online privacy. And I think it's safe to say that true online anonymity is a tough goal to achieve. It's a complex and ever-changing landscape.
It is. But with a little bit of awareness, the right tools, and some effort, we can all take steps to be more in control of our digital lives.
Couldn't agree more. Huge thanks to our expert, Laura Wilson, for sharing your knowledge and insights with us. It's always a pleasure, Laura.
The pleasure is all mine, Michael.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, knowledge is power. The more you know about online privacy, the better equipped you'll be to make informed choices about your data.
Absolutely.
If you enjoyed this episode of the AnzenGuard podcast, please subscribe to our channel, give us a like, leave a comment, and share with your friends. We release new episodes every week, packed with insights on cybersecurity, privacy, and everything digital. So stay tuned. I'm Michael Reynolds.
And I'm Laura Wilson.
Signing off from the AnzenGuard podcast. Stay safe and stay private online.